I need some traction. You need some traction.
Thanks everyone for joining us this morning. I'm particularly excited to chat with Justin this morning. I thought I'd start off with, you told me a very interesting story right this morning of your arrival to Vancouver and your welcoming party at the airport. Maybe you could share that with everyone as well.
Oh yeah, sure. So I got off the plane in Vancouver yesterday, and I opened Uber to try to get here. I was like, there's no Uber. I've never experienced that. I've been to there's Uber in Jakarta, there's Uber, or pretty much everywhere I've been the last couple of years, there's Uber. And I had to think back, what did I do before Uber? So luckily we walked out of the gate into the, and there's these guys holding up a sign that says, Justin Khan, Justin TV. And I was like, the conference sent someone because they knew there was no Uber. So they were like, he's defenseless. He's never going to be able to figure out how to get from the airport here. And so they sent someone for me, saved. But it turns out these guys actually weren't from the conference. They were stalking me on Snapchat. And they wanted to get some advice on their startup. At least, I was hoping that's what they wanted. So I was like, okay, that's weird, but that's awesome. And can you give me a ride to the Sheraton? So they did. I left a message on my Snapchat. I was like, if this is the last snap you ever see, call help.
Well, I think that could be a new business there alone. Instead of paying an Uber, they could pay with a pitch. Or they could pay with you accepting a pitch, and then you get a free ride anywhere you go. That could be your next YC-funded company right there.
Or people could just look on Snapchat for people coming into YVR and then pick them up at the airport and be like, $20, I'll take you anywhere.
That's true. New acquisition channel for Uber right there.
This is like Uber 2.0.
Awesome. Always great to have new fun stories kick it off. And so maybe let's start off with, many people don't know actually your first startup, Kiko Software. I mean, great story to share there, but it sounds like started from your Yale dorm room.
Yeah, so I have this theory that everybody, well, maybe not everybody, some people need a shitty first startup. I had this English teacher when I was in the 10th grade, and he had this theory that you just need to, when you're writing something, you just need to get it out there, start writing, right? Make a shitty first draft. It's not gonna, you don't even want it to be good. Then you improve on it over time. And so that's my retroactive excuse for my first startup. It's my shitty first draft. And it started off when I was in college. I was an undergrad in 2004 is when we actually started working on it. And we were like, this is a great time to start a startup. I have one friend who's my college roommate, and he's an investor actually. He runs a fund at Soros now. And he was like, we have all this access to free intellectual capital. And he was always thinking about what's undervalued. And he's like, all these smart people we're in college with are undervalued right now. We should start a startup to capitalize on that, to like their immense talent. I don't know. It wasn't obvious to me that there was immense talent surrounding me at the time. But we decided to start a company, and then we didn't, we had to come up with an idea. So we'd seen Gmail, and we were like, there should be a calendar version of that. And so we tried to make a, kind of Ajax web calendar that looked like Outlook, and we ended up making that. We called it Kiko, and then a month later, Google Calendar came out. Our calendar, to be honest.
They clearly were copying you guys, right?
Well, they did the Google thing where they obviously were working on it, and it was pretty obvious of an idea at the time. But they did do that Google thing where they invite you in, and then they pump you for as much information as possible, and then they're like, goodbye. So if you get invited to go talk to Google, you be prepared. And so, we ended up, the problem with our calendar startup fundamentally was that we didn't really use calendars. So we're two college students, right? I was a senior. I only had class on Monday and Wednesday. That was my only appointments for the week. 9:30 to 11. I still remember it. So we didn't know what we were building, and my takeaway from that fundamentally is that you need to build something either that you use, or you have to actually talk to some customers who will use it. neither of which we actually did. So we ended up selling the company actually to a Canadian company, 2Cows, on eBay. For lack of a better thing to do, 1 year in, we're just two guys working on we have this calendar company that's not being used by anyone.
And was that an idea that someone gave you to sell on eBay? Did you guys come up with that?
Yeah, I saw someone else sell their company on eBay. It was this search engine called Jux2. I don't know if you remember it. They basically took Google results and I think Microsoft results or maybe Yahoo results, and they put them side by side, like in an iframe. And they sold it for $100,000 on eBay. So I was like, there's something here. So when we were trying to recoup the money that we raised in a small angel round, I think it was around $70,000, we didn't have any other ideas. We ended up selling it on, well, actually I have another story about trying to sell. We tried to sell it to some real companies in a real acquisition way. We could go into that if you're interested. But then that didn't end up working out, and we decided our last ditch effort was list it on eBay, which we did, and it went, well, long story short, if eventually we got a bid, $50,000, that was our reserve price. And then we, morning of, I'm like clicking refresh on it, and it just keeps going up. It was like 50,000, then like 85,000, and then 100,000, 150, and eventually it ended up at like $258,000. And I was like, I've invented a new startup business model. I'm a successful entrepreneur, but
well, that return's higher than most venture firms, so your first outcome was already beating the industry.
Low bar. That's actually pretty sad, but. So yeah, that's how I got started. I was about to give up actually from startups because we had spent this whole year working on this calendar, and there were probably like a couple hundred people using it. We had like 25,000 user accounts, but retention was really low because the app was really slow because we didn't really use our own app. And so we ended up, we were about to give up, and then with this miraculous eBay Hail Mary, we were like, all right, it's not so bad, let's start another startup.
Nice. So where did you guys go from there? What was the next startup after Kiko?
So after that, we went back to our investor, who was Paul Graham from Y-Combinator. We were in the first batch of Y-Combinator for Kiko. And we said...
And how big was that batch, by the way?
It was 8 companies.
And how many today in YC?
How many what?
How many companies in a YC batch today?
I would do about 100 to 110 companies every batch.
Wow.
So we've grown a little bit.
Wow.
But it still has that community feel. So we went back to PG and we said, okay, we have this other idea for a company. Do you want to fund it? And we went over to his house. The idea was, it was a dumb idea. It was basically if you had online content, in a blog or something, you could lay it out and print it in a coffee table book. And he writes essays online. He's like, I'll never use that. That idea sucks. What else do you have? So we pitched him this idea for Justin TV, which was us creating our own live reality TV show, streaming on the internet, kind of like Big Brother, that would be live 24/7. That was our backup idea. And he was like, that's interesting, okay. And Robert Morris, who's one of the founding partners of Y-Combinator, who's a famous computer science professor at MIT, he was there, he's friends with Paul, and he was like, I'll fund it just to see you guys make fools of yourselves. And so we walked out of there with a check for $50,000, and Justin TV, the live reality TV show, was born.
And so talk about that experience a little bit. I mean, I think, we've all heard the funny stories of you running around with a camera strapped around your forehead, live streaming your life, but it sounds like there's also some people messing with you guys along the way as well. So talk about some of those stories.
Yeah, I guess it's a pretty atypical startup trajectory because I think a lot of people, the trials and tribulations they had during their early days were finding product market fit or raising money. We had all those problems, but we also had problems with people like swatting us, like calling the cops to our apartment because it was live and they could see us, see the door get kicked in. It was just funny in retrospect, actually, but at the time, not so much. So, we got fire trucks called to our house all the time. Basically, anytime people on the internet can see you react in live, it's a recipe for disaster. And I mean, basically, it was kind of like Periscope, right? Before there was an iPhone, and so we had to invent all this technology to create a live streaming channel, and then people would come on and they'd say, we were four guys who knew nothing about video content, like creating content. We're like engineers, right? And so they'd come on board and they'd say, you guys are really boring. Just get off your laptop and go do something entertaining. This is like not a show. It's just like 3 guys on a laptop.
You guys weren't like Silicon Valley show?
It was like the real Silicon Valley, right? Like if you filmed your office, what would it look like? Probably not that interesting. And so luckily, they came to us with this second piece of feedback, which was, I want to create my own live streaming show of something. How do I do it? How are you guys doing it? And kind of like the light bulb went off and we decided, okay, let's make a platform for anyone to create live video, which should have really been obvious because like YouTube had already been there and like sold for $1.5 billion or whatever. And so it wasn't, like a lot of people in retrospect were like, it was a genius idea for you to seed your platform by doing your own live show, but we actually weren't that smart, and we only thought of the platform like after. And this, we went back to the drawing board, and 6 months later we launched Justin TV as a platform for live video for anything, YouTube for live video.
And so how did you transition from Justin TV as a platform to ultimately, Twitch came out of that, social came out of that. Talk through that transition, because I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs here also many times have to go through that transition point of figuring out, I start with one idea and then maybe it spurs into other ideas.
Yeah, so this was our second idea, basically, to create this platform. We opened it up and people started using it, and it kind of grew and grew and grew until it stopped growing. And that was a couple of years later. We spent a lot of time working on the technology stack and building this infrastructure for streaming live video. And then eventually it stopped growing and we were like, what do we do? Anything that's not growing on the internet is about to fall off a cliff.
And why do you think it stopped growing?
It stopped growing because live video is only useful for a very limited number of things. It's, we had some pet cams, we had some, people pirating sports, and we had some, social channels where people just chat with their audience, and maybe some call-in shows, but not every type of video should be live, right? Like editing helps a lot. When they film, if you make a TV show, right? You shoot like 60 minutes of tape for like 1 minute of, that makes it to production. And with live video, you're like watching that other 59 minutes, which is why so many Periscopes are like terrible, right? And so we had the same problem. And it just kind of tapped out after a while, and so we started thinking about how can we take it to the next level, and we couldn't really get consensus among the founders, and so we decided to simultaneously pivot to 2 things, which I don't recommend. It was a bad idea, and those 2 things were Social Cam, which is kind of like Instagram for video, and Twitch, which was, gaming was about 3% of our video streams, and we decided, let's try to build that out and see if it can be bigger.
And was that controversial at the time, given that it was 3% of your total volume? How did you convince your investors? How did you guys as a team go down that route, and were there opposers to that?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the team was like, video games are not a thing, right? Watching people play video games is like, that's not a thing that people want to do. I mean, even internally, Emmett really was the one. He was, he had just started watching StarCraft 2 streams, and he was like, this is, the only thing that we actually do that I enjoy doing, the only, from a content consumption standpoint. And so he was the one who really advocated for that, and it was pretty controversial. It was hard to decide. So the way we decided, which I now tell a lot of YC companies to do if they have, they don't know if something's going to be successful, is set milestones for what you think success is, right? We backed out. We're like, if this is successful, we're going to be the biggest gaming video site on the internet. Right now, that's GameTrailers.com. It's like 10 million monthly uniques. So how fast do we have to grow to get to 10 million monthly uniques in a reasonable amount of time? We backed that out. It was like 15% monthly growth in the first year and 10% monthly growth in the second year. And so we said, if we achieve that, we're going to consider that success. And we measured it, and for the first 6 months, it grew much faster than that. And so that gave us the, fortitude to say, we should go all in on this gaming thing.
And how did you drive that growth? Was it all organic? Was it? I mean, we have also many freemium businesses in the audience as well. Curious, any lessons learned from the consumer side you can translate over to the SaaS side?
Yeah, I think it was a pretty simple process actually. And the first step was that we had a bunch of different constituents on the site, right? There's people who are broadcasting video, broadcasters. There's people who are watching, and there's the advertisers who kind of paid for everything. And so Emmett really drove us to decide that we were focused only on broadcasters at first, and they were our customers. So we went to the broadcasters and we said, what's it going to take for you to create content on our site? Like either create more content if you're already on it, or if you're on YouTube or like one of our competitor sites, what's it going to take for you to bring your gaming video and do it on Justin TV and eventually Twitch? And we changed the name to Twitch after 6 months. And so they would come back with various things. They'd say, I want to make money, your quality sucks, I need X, Y, or Z feature. And so we built those things, and then we just go back to them and say, hey, we built this thing. And they'd inevitably say, well, I didn't expect you to do that, so I'm not coming over. And then we'd be like, okay, is there some other set of things that we could do? And then eventually we just kind of kept building enough features, and they'd be like, oh, we actually did those things. And then they would join one by one, and that kind of got our seed community started. And so, I mean, the process really was just talking to our customers and identifying what they really, really wanted from us, and then trying to deliver that and going back to them and saying, hey, we built that. And we just did that pretty much for the first couple of years. Outside of that, I would say really investing in the community. These people is a nascent community of people who wanted to create something bigger, right? They thought esports was going to be a thing, and they wanted to be part of that. They were really passionate about gaming, and so trying to get out there and support our community however we could at events, helping them get set up to broadcast, making them feel like they were part of it really helped us.
And how big did Twitch ultimately get in terms of users?
Well, a couple of years later, we sold it to Amazon for $970 million, and that was at 55 million MAU, 55 million monthly active users. And today, I think the last announced is 100 million MAU.
Wow.
So pretty big, bigger than we ever thought.
And then curious, we're at Bessemer actually investors in Twitch, so
Yeah.
Thank you.
True believers.
True believers.
Well, they invested when very few people, we tried to raise money multiple times. We did successfully raise money multiple times, but it was always very hard because people would see it and they'd say, that's not a thing. It's not going to be a thing. It's a small thing. And a little frustrating because at the same time we were kind of on the same order of magnitude as like a Pinterest. They would have a much easier time, I think, on the financing side. And so we're very thankful to those few people who believed in us early on.
Well, it's funny because it was before my time, before I got to Bessemer.
Well, you get credit.
But I said thank you, not credit. But I remember, the stories always come back and a lot of discussion, and it was a very controversial deal, I remember, just for this exact reason. And people were like, I don't get it. Like, I don't like to watch gamers. Why would you want to watch gamers play? But it sounded like from the metrics, and that was what really got the deal done was, we had someone in our team who kind of just tracked your metrics for a couple months and said, I've never seen anything grow like this. This is crazy. I've never seen anyone spend this many hours watching someone else do something. And I think that's what ultimately got us excited, but yeah, it worked out well. And so curious, I think a lot of people when they saw the announcement of Amazon acquiring Twitch were like, oh, that's interesting. Wouldn't have thought of that. Was it a surprise to you guys, or was that always kind of, did you always feel that was an alignment?
Well, I think that it was a surprise initially that they were interested in doing something with us, But, by the time that it was announced, it wasn't a surprise then. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that any, big internet company is interested in anything that lots of people use. It's like, the companies are, and I think like now more and more like the bigger internet companies tend towards, it might be the case that the internet tends towards monopoly, and that they, want to be able to like find things that they can drive a lot of adoption to using their existing user bases, right? I think that's, Facebook's done this the best recently with like, it's Facebook and Instagram and, now Oculus and WhatsApp. And so, I think every big internet company is looking for other things that are growing quickly that they can drive adoption to, regardless of whether like on the cover seems to make sense or not.
Makes sense. And maybe one last question, then we'll open up to the audience for a handful of questions as well. You've been a big avid Snapchat user, and so curious to hear, what do you think of their last valuation? And do you think they're the next Facebook, bigger than Facebook? Where do you think the opportunity is there?
So I think I love Snapchat. It's my favorite app. And I think a lot of the thing I really liked about it was a lot of the innovation in the past, I'd say 6 or 7 years in Silicon Valley has been business model innovation, right? Like Airbnb or Uber. It's not like hard technology. It's like an insightful and interesting way of like connecting people around buying something, right? And so Snapchat's the first product I've used in a long time where I was like, oh, this is really innovative from a product side. And interestingly enough, they solve a lot of the things that we originally tried to do at Justin TV, right? Like they help you capture just that, 1 out of 60 minutes that's interesting, and then share that to in a low friction way where you're like not embarrassed to share it. If I was smarter, I might have thought of Snapchat when we, given the lessons learned from Justin TV. Are they going to be bigger than Facebook? I don't know. I think they're going to be a lot bigger than they are right now. I think they've hit this critical mass. I think it happened actually outside of the US before it happened inside the US, but like now I see more and more VCs and investors on it. And that's when it's like totally jumped the shark, like gone mainstream.
When all the VC's on,
yeah.
that's the answer.
Bad news, run for the hills.
Well, awesome. We're already getting the signs of time, but if there's one question in the audience, anybody want to ask a quick question to Justin?
The best question.
The best question that might end up on Snapchat. Back corner.
Something Paul told us that we initially disagreed with, but actually turned out to be great advice. Well, he told me to go get all the unemployed actors in Hollywood and put them on Justin TV. I guess you could say that kind of translates to gamers who want to be famous being on Justin TV. I don't know. I think Paul is very, his number one quality, he's a very smart guy, great programmer, but he has this infectious enthusiasm that you can't help but resist getting excited about your own company. You'll come to him with an idea and you'll be like, Paul, this is like $100 million idea market, and it's like a great idea, people want it, we solve this problem, and he'll be like, no, you're gonna take over the world, this is even bigger than this, everyone can use this. And it'll like lay out how, like this way that, your small thing can turn into something super big. Justin TV, us making our own reality show, turned into a way that we're going to revolutionize entertainment, because everyone's going to be able to have their own, way that they can create content and share it with people. And he kind of like, when we were originally pitching Justin TV, this pre-social media really, he kind of outlined why it could be something big. It could be social media. And I guess if I was smarter, I probably would have taken that advice and built something different. But I think that's the thing he really gives to the companies, is he makes you believe in your company more than you ever did, which is, pretty valuable. All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Justin, so much for your time. Everyone give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
I need some traction. You need some traction.